Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. And today, guys, we're going to be talking about the number one power that you have as a bass angler that is uniquely your own. Nobody can take it away from you, and it is the thing that is going to determine the level of success that you have in fishing if you tap into that. So I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to tap into that ability today, and I think you guys will really like the results of it. So we'll get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, quick invitation. I'd just like to invite everybody, anybody interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me before we get started. You can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and just shoot me a private message for information. And also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that's been checking out my Tackle Warehouse link that I put in every video description. All you guys that are bookmarking and using that link to buy your tackle, a big thank you from me and my family. We really appreciate that. Okay, guys, you know what the number one thing is? The number one strength that you have as an angler that nobody else has except you is your own creativity and imagination. That is by far the most important element in becoming a good bass angler. Now, I used to think that I didn't used to believe that. I used to think that bass fishing was all about time on the water and experience and gaining experience, where you can take that and you can, identify situations that you've caught them in before and duplicate that. And there is some truth to that, to a little bit, but guys, it's been my experience from my observation of my own fishing and people around me that just using your own creativity and your imagination outweighs experience by far. And a lot of this, that's how innovation in fishing takes place. It's like when people come up with new ideas and new concepts and new ways to catch bass. Nobody knows if that's going to work when you first started out. You just get an idea in your head and you want to try that. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But one of the things I want to talk about in today's video is how to cultivate that creativity and the imagination that you have as an angler. Because let's say, for example, that you and I were in the boat together and we're fishing down this bank. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, say you're on the trolling motor for the first pass, and then I'm on the trolling motor for the second pass. Now, I may have some concepts in my mind about things that I want to try on this bank based upon my past experience. I may want to try a crankbait or, flip a jig or something, depending upon how I see it setting up. And you may look at that bank at a completely different light. And, me wanting to throw the crankbait and the flip a jig, you may look at it and say, well, man, I'm going to catch them on an Alabama rig and a shaky head there. So everybody perceives and they approach fishing situations differently. And that is one of the things that should give you confidence, is because nobody knows what's going to work. It's all a guessing game, because you can be in the boat with the best angler in the world, and you may not know hardly anything about bass fishing, but you're going to beat that best bass angler in the world from time to time, simply because you're going to try stuff that they never tried before. And that is so key in bass fishing, is to give those bass something they've never seen or, had any type of a look before. Let me give you one prime example here, what I'm talking about. I was fishing a tournament down at the Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana. And the Atchafalaya Basin, it's like a cypress swamp. There's cypress trees everywhere. And I was catching some fish, flipping a jig on a cypress tree. And I was catching them with a brown jig and a brown chunk on it. That was my setup. And I was using a 3/8 of an ounce, catching a few fish. But I got looking at it, and it's like the water was dirty. I mean, it was like 4 inches of visibility. You could only see down about that far in it. And the jig that I was using, it just, even though I was getting some bites on it, it just didn't really look that great in the water. So I started experimenting and tweaking with different colors and tying up skirts. I got a skirt tying kit in the skirt tying kit with me in the boat. So what I finally did is I started experimenting with different colors until I got something that looked good in the water. And after experimenting with some different trailers and dyes, I finally came up, instead of using a straight brown jig, I went to a brown with orange in it that made it stand out a little bit. And then I put a green pumpkin trailer on it. But what I did is I dyed half of the trailer black and half of it bright chartreuse. So I had this brown and orange, black and chartreuse jig. And when I put it in the water, it looked awesome because it stood out a little bit, but it blended in a little bit. It looked really, really good. And I started fishing it and catching a few fish on it. So I got confidence in that color. But then I started noticing it's like, man, the water is really dirty and it's really shallow. It's like I was only catching them in like 2 foot of water. I think my jig is falling too fast. And all I had, the lightest jig I had was a 3/8 ounce. So I took a file out and I filed this jig down to next to nothing. It's like I filed the head on it down to where it probably only weighed 1/8 of an ounce. And it had this real slow fall on a full-size jig. And guys, after I started filing that head down and went to that color and that light head, I whacked them. I wound up finishing in the top 10 in the tournament. And if I wouldn't have used just my imagination and creativity, I never would have come up with that. So remember that. It's like when you're out on the lake, don't just don't fall into the trap of throwing everything stock that you got off the tackle store shelf and, things you read about. Try different approaches, try different retrieves, try different colors, different lure profiles, different casting angles. Just constantly experiment until you hit upon something that those fish want, because that's how you figure out the bass, is through trial and error. If you have something in your mind that you think might work, just don't second guess yourself. Just try it for 5 minutes, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. I'll tell you another story, a tournament I fished. This was, I'd actually related this story before because it was such a profound example of what I'm talking about. I was fishing a tournament down in Florida at the Harris Chain of Lake, and the place that I was fishing there, the water was really dirty. It had been stirred up through wind, and the visibility was only, maybe 6 inches visibility, which is really dirty for Florida. And anyway, I was catching them flipping a June bug colored creature bait, which was a dark creature bait in that off-colored water. And I was catching a decent number of fish in practice. And I drew the co-angler in that tournament who, when we got to the spot, he pulled out a watermelon seed trick worm. And when he put that thing in the water, it disappeared. It was such a subtle hue in that muddy water that it just like he literally put it in the water and I couldn't even see it. Guys, he whacked my butt on that watermelon trick worm in that dirty water. I never would have tried that in a million years, because everything I know about fishing, that's sort of counterintuitive to what I know about fishing in dirty water. But the guy that I fished with, he hadn't fished enough to know that he didn't have enough experience to know that shouldn't work. He thought it looked good and he was going to try it and it worked. So that is the power that you have, is what I'm talking about, is use your imagination, use your creativity to try things that you may or may not have ever heard about. And a lot of times it works out, and a lot of times it works out in a big way. So anyway, guys, hope it helps you out, and we'll talk later.